baby girls and a baby boys. Man make them happy, 'cause man make them toys. And after man make everything he can, you know that man makes money to buy from other men. This is a man's world, but it would be nothing, not one little thing without a woman or a girl. He's lost in the wilderness. He's lost in bitterness. He's lost.
Good morning to the listening public. Tune in to Kyrie FM on all frequencies, 88.7, 93.1 FM, and 107.9. We're here live in the studio of Kyrie FM today because it is International Men's Day. And actually, literally in the studio surrounded by men. So happy International Men's Day to each and every one of you. This special program is brought to you by the Bureau of Gender Affairs, who is actually part of the Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disabilities. Now, this morning in the studio of Kyrie FM, I have the pleasure of having two distinguished gentlemen with me. We have the National Coordinator for the COVID-19 Vaccination Program, Dr. Kevin Burnett. Good morning, Dr. Burnett.
Good morning, and how are you?
I am well, thank you.
Thank you for having me today.
You're most welcome. And I have Brenton Hillier, who actually is basically a staple of our radio programs. He's always eager and, willing to volunteer whenever that we ask him to. So good morning to you, Brenton.
Good morning, and good morning to everyone listening.
Okay. So International Men's Day, what I found this morning is that most people were not even aware that there is such a day to celebrate men. And what the ministry wants to do is continuously highlight that day to give it more recognition, simply because our men have to be celebrated equally as much as our women are. And our men are strong role models. What they actually do, they bring every single aspect of life, be it the community, be it the family, be it the business place. They actually make significant contribution. A fun fact that I actually read today on Google, there are actually 6 pillars to International Men's Day. And the primary reason for International Men's Day is to reinforce the role of men and the integral role that they play in our society today. Okay, but before we actually delve into all of that, I would like you all to introduce ourselves to the public. So they've, Dr. Bennett has actually plunged Brenton to the deep end. So you could go ahead, Brenton.
Hi, good morning to everyone once again. So I am Brenton Hillier, and if you're not familiar with me, I am the agency manager at Sagicor, Senior Vice President at the DAIC. I'm a Rotarian, a member of the Toastmasters Club and different organizations. So I find myself in different organizations to see how I can help others in society, how I can contribute, and how I can become a better person myself.
Okay. Dr. Burnett?
Okay, so I'm not as decorated as Mr. Hillier, but my name is Kevin Burnett. I'm a medical doctor. I am currently engaged in primary health care. My district is the St. Joseph district. It extends from Collio to Bells, so I manage and run that district, as well as recently appointed as the National Coordinator of the COVID-19 Vaccination Unit.
Okay. Well, Dr. Burnett and, Mr. Hillier, today we're not going to be interviewing you in your professional capacities. What I actually want to do is actually interview as the brothers, the fathers, the sons, the cousins, the friends, and the actual men that you are. And whilst we continue this discussion, basically to give your personal view, as well as, because there's always an overlap on intersection between your personal and professional lives, and how we can actually give, advice to men when it comes to taking care of their health, their mental health, how to go about, keeping that drive when they want to achieve their goals, to be an actual role model, to be better fathers or continue being good fathers, loyal friends, sons. So this is the line of discussion that we're going to entertain today. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a short break and we will be right back.
Kiss and hug, good to go. Data for the girl them set on here, the way in the scrub. How we them say right now, them want come give them some good love. Cool. The girl them call me all the while, tell me them a secret admirer. Tell me yo what we them are with prayer, special prayer power, left them just chill with we. We them want retire for it me a sell the anaconda, waffy be the buyer for. All the while tell me she a secret admirer. Tell we how we them are with prayer, special prayer power, left them just chill with me. Me them want retire for. Me a sell it no well them woulda be the yep. Them giving us a fight, but how we the girl them like at the end of the day. Me the girl them want in on them sight at the end of the day. Me the girl them want in on them life at the end of the day. Give them dinner with candle light at the end of the day. Over with the girl them all a fight at the end of the day. Me them want to fly them like a kite at the end of the day. Come in at the middle of the night. She want me take up on a love flight. The girl them say me good to go. Fire burn the boy them with a go below. And I come and say that them a talking on me hear it.
And welcome back to the listening public. And for those of you just tuning in, today is International Men's Day, and we are live here in the studios of Kyrie FM to discuss better health for boys and men. So, Dr. Burnett, generally, when I was growing up, you always simply hear, men don't really take care of themselves, and men need to take better care of themselves.
Yes, it's a sad truth. You find men always delaying in terms of healthcare or even just basic stuff. So my aunt always tells me as a young man it's not always about just being manly. You also have to understand that you have to take care of yourself and your personal appearance. So taking care of yourself doesn't always mean medication, but it means mental health, your appearance, everything. Make sure that you have a proper haircut, because your first impression is a lasting impression. Make sure that you maybe, sometimes take your time to do your feet or something for yourself that keeps you in line as to, okay, this is how I am on a daily basis, but I can break a trend and do something that will keep me on a stable path, per se.
Yes, and you rightfully said, masculine, because when it comes to socialization, particularly in the Caribbean context, men, I think masculinity has always been incorrectly defined.
Indeed.
Men have always been told, they're supposed to be the hard ones.
Don't cry.
Yes, they're not supposed to cry. They're not really supposed, basically their dispositions are supposed to be just stoic. Show little to no emotions, when things actually bother them, they're supposed to keep it bottled up.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've seen, especially in times of current COVID-19 crisis, when there has been a shift in, income earning for men, they actually, out of jobs and everything. Because we find traditionally women work in the office space. Women are nurses.
Yes.
So they've retained that income. And they've always been told that they're the ones who have to be, the providers and all of that. So crisis like COVID-19 severely impacts a man's mental health.
Yes, and also to his ego, because as you said, he's supposed to be the breadwinner, the provider, he's supposed to be the dominant force in a relationship all around the table. So if that certain, let's say this pandemic that we are in right now, it tends to weigh him down. Mm-hmm. So he would be subject to maybe having to depend on his significant other or other family members to help him to reach the point where he wants to be in his life. So that in itself takes a toll on your mental health too. So it goes around the board. So it's something that has to be incorporated, and you have to find a balance in that. So men have to understand, okay, as much as I want to be that dominant force, there's sometimes that I may need to take a seat back, retrospect, analyze, and then see how I can come with some new ideas and initiatives to boost my morale as well as a man.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And the international theme for today's International Men's Day is better relations between men and women. Mm-hmm. And it is very timely and fitting, because when people think about relations, they simply actually think about, that romantic side of it, like we're dating and everything. But it is every single aspect, better relations as to, how men and women interact with each other on a daily basis. How much of a good brother that you are. how much of a good community member that you are, how much of a good neighbor that you are, because at the end of the day, how should I say it? If our men are not celebrated, especially on these days, and if relationships between men and women, are not good, it could be a breakdown in society. Because, a man is essentially, you have to quote the Bible, the head of the household. And if you relate to your brothers differently, if you actually show more compassion, more love, you show more support, you don't let them fall by the wayside. If you be your better uncle, you take care of your uncle, if you take care of, that neighbor of yours, it actually helps each and every person around you.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
Brenton, you look like you have something to chime in.
No, I was just listening to what you're saying, and the part that made me smile was the part about the man is supposed to be the head of the household.
Yes.
And it brought me back to a joke that I heard from a married individual, married for several years, and he said that if a man thinks he's the head of the household, he's lying to himself. Okay, he says, basically, the woman is the one that really keeps the house together. It's true the man has to provide, but then what you find is that the contribution that your spouse or your other half brings to that house is very significant, and sometimes that is underrated or undervalued. So that's what it brought me back to. But I mean, it goes back to the partnership and the understanding.
Yes.
At the house, you have to have that conversation with your other half as to, okay, what are my responsibilities? What are your responsibilities? And it goes back to the whole concept of, I think, masculinity, where before, in our time especially, I cannot say for the current generation, but our time, you were always made to believe that as a man, you had to say all, you had to do all. It was what you said that had to be done. But I find it actually works against what it means to be in partnership with someone, because if you're in a house with someone, you should be discussing different ideas with them, coming to decisions with them. It shouldn't just be you coming in the house and say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So I think that's the context of his statement when he said that if you think that you're the man of the house, you're lying to yourself. You really have to be in a partnership with your other half.
With your other half. And something that basically two of you have said that has resounded. One, men were taught to be masculine and stoic, and they were also taught they have to work. Their work could be every single thing they have to do is only surrounded about providing. So when does a man relax and sit back and take time for himself? Like you said, ensure that he has a proper haircut. Ensure that he takes care of himself. He actually goes to the doctor. So because if a man is no longer in the household, when you come to the nuclear family context, there's a breakdown. Children need their father, wife needs their husbands or their significant other. I mean, I guess when we grew up, social studies, they should tell you family is a pillar of the society. So if you have men not being there or not playing that role model position that they're supposed to, I'm not talking about, the man has to have the say, or you rightfully said, it is a partnership. But if the men are not sufficiently empowered to be men, there is going to be a breakdown in every aspect.
Indeed.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, so we're just going to take a short break, and Selector Urban is going to play, I think it's James Brown, It's a Man's World.
To take us over the road. Man made the train to carry the heavy load. Man made the electric light to take us out of the dark. Man made the boat for the water, like Noah made the ark. This is a man's world. But it wouldn't be nothing without a woman on there.
So equally, after you all introduced yourself, something that occurred to me, you both give a life of service. Granted, yes, I always say being a doctor is not as glamorous as it looks. Because I know quite a few people who are doctors and they work extremely hard, and it's a continuous life of service. You know, in a capacity, you take care of people on a day-to-day basis. You know, like yourself, you are a member of several groups who are essentially voluntary groups. So how can, you know, as men, how can you encourage men to be better community members? You know, how can, you know, they actually, you know, take charge in their community and say, hey, I'm going to give back?
I think the challenge is how we communicate the value of those different organizations to individuals. And maybe that's something that we need to focus more on in our education system. Because, I mean, in school, you're basically taught academics, and that's about it. But then if you have to follow the path of several successful people, it's not just about academics. It's about who you associate yourself with, the people that you frequent with. All of that leads towards some goal that you're working towards. And I think we have to do a better job in showing people that there is value in being in those organizations, but value towards contributing towards your goal. So based on your career path, now not everyone should be in an organization like that. But really, based on your career path, where you see yourself in the future, we should be able to give them advice as to, okay, you want to be a leader in the future, you should join Toastmasters. You want to be a stalwart in society, maybe you want to think about Rotary to give back. So we have to show them the alignment between those organizations and their goals, and that's the only way we can convince them to be a part of it. But just coming out and saying, hey, you need to join a social club, for what? And I've realized in this day and age, it's no longer about just telling people what to do, but you have to spend more time to explain why they have to do it. So I think that's what's really missing right now.
So actually showing them and the value in actually giving back and being present in the community.
Yes.
Because, well, I commute every day on public transportation. I remember one time this guy says, oh, he's just a fisherman. And I said to myself, he fails to realize that he plays an integral part in food security.
Indeed.
It's about teaching people to value themselves at every single level that they are. So our men are not, you know, just the fishermen, just the farmers. Men are not just anything. Every single occupation that you have, it plays a key role in how the society and the community functions. Be it you be a doctor, be it be you a carpenter, be the guys who come and you know, dispose of your garbage. You can imagine if one day nobody ever comes to pick up your rubbish.
Yes.
What really happens?
Chaos.
You know, so it's about letting people know, like, irrespective of what you do, what your income is, you are valuable, you are valued, and you actually play a role that you should be proud of. You shouldn't just sit down and say, I am just that.
And I agree, because we have to understand too, it goes, it's respect around the table. So it's not because I'm a doctor, as I would say, that my cleaner at my health center, I would not sit down and have a conversation with him or her, because at the end of the day, you need people to understand and you respect everybody's capacity, because some things that you cannot do, but some things you can learn. So in my rapport with her or him on a given day, I can know how he or she does their job. So if they're not there one day, maybe I can try to take on the mantle and help to society, because, as you said, if somebody doesn't come to pick up the garbage, we are in a problem, right? A detrimental problem. We are going to be exposed to rodents, increasing leptospirosis, all the different pathogens and diseases that comes about having garbage breeding around our environment. So it has to also understand that you are an integral part in your community. Persons have to understand you gravitate towards positivity. So if I know you're going to make a positive contribution to my life, I gravitate towards you. So a lot of young men in our community has to be seen as that. So you have to understand you carry yourself with respect. Also, you never know who you are impacting, because some people may watch me privately and say, oh boy, I want to be like him. But I may not ever engage them, and I miss out on an opportunity to invest in someone's life. So our men have to understand that no matter what role you play in society, you are important. You mean something to somebody, even without you actually knowing that. So, again, you have to be integral. It's not about just, as you say, if you want to be a leader tomorrow, join Toastmasters. You don't have to actually belong to an organization. You could have a small church group. You could have a community activist, something to do something different. On Saturday, I pick up the young boys in my community. We're going to play football. In that time, I'm keeping you off the streets for any problem, any accidents at home, any violence, any domestic abuse, all these different little nitty-gritty things that we have to really analyze and see how can men make an important or significant impact on the lives of the young boys and as well as the young youth, the females as well.
Yeah.
Yes. What I find these days, you all can correct me at any point in time. Before, you used to find, again, too, like you rightfully said, you're the one in the community who's quote unquote has achieved, and you see yourself now as a role model. And I actually want to pick up the youth, and I actually want to. But you really don't find that anymore. And what do you think has led to this breakdown, though?
Mr. Healy, you want to take on that mantle?
Yes.
We
Try to
strengthen each
analyze
other.
it.
Is it because that men who has achieved don't see the need again to pull up the ones
We may
at the back? Is it?
we may forget where we started, the pillar, the foundation, and then gravitate towards something else and lose sight of what really is the foundation that made us to who we are today. So a lot of persons, when they, you maybe leave your community, let's say you live in Portsmouth, but you work predominantly in Roseau. So you live Portsmouth and you're just based in Roseau. So basically your life is work to home. You forget your roots, or you don't have so much connection with your roots back there. So the persons who are looking up towards you saying, okay, he's hailed from Portsmouth, but he lives in Roseau. You dedicate all your time to that area.
Yes.
And the youth that are looking up to you from that area, you don't really go back to invest in them. You don't really have a connection. So it's like you're contributing to society, but the person that actually needs you to contribute or to continue the cycle, that trend is broken there already. So I don't know if I am actually pointing out to what she actually asked.
Yes, you
Yeah.
are. Most definitely.
But
Yes.
I like the feedback. I want to make sure that I'm on the correct path. So Mr. Hile, can you tell me that you agree, or we can?
I would say 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think it's case-by-case basis. He had a very good point. That does happen, but in other cases, it's not. In my opinion, it's not necessarily that. I mean, I know of a lot of people who find their own way of giving back. It does not necessarily have to be in actually picking up the children, taking them to the sports.
Yeah, I
but
understand that.
in speaking to them, in sharing positive messages with them, in looking for opportunities with them. Those avenues also are available. But I think also the people within the society, or I should say the community specifically, can also play a part in it. And a perfect example I can use is some of the high schools that exist. For example, if you are a past student and they know that you have had some success, or regardless of whether you've had success, but being a past student, you're going about life, some of them actually have days where they call in those students, past students, to come in and speak to the current students. I recently did that at the Dominica Grammar School. And sometimes we have to go for what we want. So it's not really all the time we should sit back and wait for someone to do something for us. But using a rough example, if I'm from Roseau, and even if I'm living in Portsmouth, just use this example, and because of my busy schedule, I might have forgotten, but the people in Roseau who maybe are in charge of different social groups, different organizations can say, hey, Brenton, we know you're very busy, but we would really appreciate if you could come down and speak to the boys and share your story with them so that you can motivate them. So it has to be a sort of partnership, hand in hand, where if those persons who have made it don't show up, that actually need their services, go for them.
Well, somebody actually just sent me a WhatsApp message saying that they find that there's basically a lack of role models for young men today. Like if the person was basically saying young men basically right now look towards the American culture, they look at the rap videos and they try to emulate that. What do you think we can actually be done to bridge that?
I think each of us have to try to inspire one.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a special case. People who follow me on social media see that every day what you're going to get from me is positivity.
Yes.
So in my own space, I'm trying to find out how I can inspire others. If anyone comes to me for advice, I share time with them, I speak to them. So I find my way of really trying to make a difference. But I mean, in my scale, I cannot impact all of Dominica. I can only do one by one. And I remember speaking to a guy some years ago in Jamaica, and he said that I do public speaking. He said whenever you do public speaking, the goal is not really to touch everyone. The goal is just to touch one life.
Yes.
And then when you touch one life, that one life then touches someone else.
Forward,
So
yes.
within our sphere, we as men have to see that one person that we can maybe have an impact on, and hopefully it will pass on to someone else.
It's like a chain reaction.
Chain reaction, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
like a chain reaction. And I agree with Mr. Hillier as to his point on what he just said.
So, what I again to a lot of people tend to say, especially in the Dominican context, if we have to go back to the family, you find that there are a lot of delinquent fathers. Yes.
Interesting. That's
yeah.
a hot topic.
Yeah,
Very
people
much
speak
so.
about there are a lot of delinquent fathers, and I think comes back to the relations again between men and women. And by relations, I'm not speaking about the relationship. I am speaking about from early childhood, from how a child was raised. And when you raise a boy, you have to teach him to take responsibility for every single aspect of his life. And should you become a father, or when you become a father, that you are now responsible for that life, molding that life.
Indeed, you are. And it stems from maybe, as you said, the early childhood. So if a child tends to do something bad, and let's say the mother and the father is not together, the mother will tend to say, oh, you're just like your father. Everything that's bad is of the father. Nothing good is from the mother, or nothing good is from the father itself. So we also have to understand is how we set the trend. So it's a trend that has been happening from generation to generation, and it just keep on flowing.
Yeah.
So we have to try to see if we can break that cycle. And if we break that cycle, maybe the delinquent fathers may not be under so much scrutiny, and they can pull up their socks and say, hey, I have a life to take care of, I have a life to mold, I have somebody who look out for me, to protect them, and then you can set that standard about right there. Just so how I feel about the situation.
I mean, if you play devil's advocate, is it because if you even on Mother's Day, when Father's Day comes around, you find that even the fathers are not celebrated as they should be. Mother's Day is all bells and whistles. You find, even from the radio program to giveaways in the supermarkets,
Yes.
even to the mass campaign on social media, it's always more towards the women and towards the men. So is it because over time, it has sipped into the subconscious is, I am a father, but a mother's role is more important than mine? Do you think that's what it is?
I think it goes back to the definition of masculinity. And I want to go back to your previous statement about delinquent fathers. And I think the cause of that is really the heart of being a quote-unquote man. Because from where I stand, now I can't really speak for everyone, but from where I stand, I cannot fathom having a child and not paying attention to the child. If that is the case, then there may be something blocking that sort of interaction that I want to have with that child. And it goes to the heart of the problem of being a man, as I mentioned, which is men don't talk. Men are very emotional beings, but they don't talk. If they have an issue, they keep it on the inside. I did some reading, and it actually said that the number one killer for men under 45 is suicide. And that clearly says that they have some issues that they just feel like they cannot sort it out. And talking helps. So a man, for example, will go through a very bad breakup, and because he is so emotionally hurt, he's unable to see the person, not talk to the person. And because of that, that is preventing him from interacting with his child. Because why? When he goes to see his child, he has to face the person, and it goes back to all the emotional stuff. He doesn't speak to anyone about it. So I think that is the heart of the issue of maybe why we have such a high incidence of delinquent fathers, quote unquote. It's really about they not being able to handle the situation that is there at present. I mean, a woman is amazing when it comes to that. She will be vexed with you, but then she'll still talk to you, be friends with you like nothing happened. But for men, it's very difficult for men, from what I know, when you have had a very bad breakup, and that hurts you for life.
And not only that, if I'm allowed to interject right here, like what you said, when men are emotional creatures, but they've been engineered not to be emotional creatures.
But they've been engineered not to share it, because, like he said earlier, men have been told not to cry.
Not to cry.
You'll have all the feelings to let it go, but you're being told not to cry, and it stays inside, and it starts building and growing until the point where you just cannot deal with it anymore.
And take, for example, if you were to go by Urban, and Urban tell you, my brother, what all that story is about, you and the girl finish,
Go knock yourself.
Yeah. So Urban himself may checking like, boy, I get a bad couple from a thing the other day, But I myself couldn't go and share that, because if you share it, you're not a man
Exactly.
anymore. If you share, okay, you go to work and the work situation is stressing you out, you're not a man anymore. If you have, a family situation, with your mother or something, and it's something that is emotionally stressing you, you're not allowed to share it or say it, because you're not a man anymore.
Correct.
A man is supposed to go to work, he's supposed to provide for the family, and that's about it.
So,
Yeah.
with that being said, if all the emotion that incorporate to the situation, it also brings forth other habits that we may develop. So you don't want to talk about it, so I may indulge in alcohol
Yes.
and become an alcoholic.
Correct.
Or I just may start smoking. And these in itself is drugs. So drugs change your mental status. So a lot of them, when they take the drugs, it changes your way that you act, the way that you think, the way that you speak, your whole societal or your whole morals is changed. So that's why we get a lot of persons, going into mental health issues
Yes.
with that whole not speaking about it and keeping it to myself. So I indulge in something else that may be detrimental to not just my health, but to myself in society per se. So it all intertwines, and we have to understand there needs to be a balance.
Yes.
So even if you don't speak to somebody about it, look at a way to vent about it. Maybe you go at the top of Mount Top it or wherever the place may be and scream.
Or, it's another very healthy way too. And so a lot of people say, like, why should a man do it? I think journaling helps.
Yes.
You sit and you journal. If you're not, you don't figure you have that safe space to vent, you sit down and you journal.
Because some people tend not to
Yeah.
talk about their situations because your friend is a friend to someone else.
Oh, yes.
So, me talking to Mr. Healy about the situation, I don't know if his friends is Selector Urban, my countryman right there. And Urban goes back to tell somebody else. So the whole chain reaction happens again. Boy, you heard what happened to that doctor, no, boy.
Yeah.
So that insecurity already builds up. So men have to understand, if you have one route that don't work, try to divert to something else and see how it can work for you. So it's all about adapting to situations, I believe. And that can also break the trends of certain detrimental things that may happen to the men.
Yes.
And may also break relationships with their children and other family members and spouses and significant others as well.
Correct.
Maybe I'm allowed to just go back to what you said initially about, the consumption of alcohol and drugs. Post Hurricane Maria, we saw a lot of little more cabarets setting up. If I have to go back to that, because remember, the place was not fully functional yet, and you will find a lot of men congregating there. And it was a very traumatic time, and I believed that the bottle became a safe haven for a lot.
Correct.
And sometimes once your mouth gets to like rum, it becomes a problem.
Indeed.
So it goes back again to men's health and boys' health.
Yes.
It has always been like that in Dominica. You go to the shop and you buy what you might call it a shooter rum for your grandmother and your grandfather. Vendors don't respect the fact that you're supposed to be of legal age to sell alcohol to you. So when you talk about the health of men and boys, you find a lot of young boys, you just see them just easy breezy, just light up a joint. And every single day, that's just all that they find
It's a
comfort
habit,
in. It
yeah.
becomes a habit.
Yes.
And once that habit is there, and like we were taught, it was a gateway drug. Marijuana has always been a gateway drug, or considered to be back then a gateway drug. And then these young boys, they may move on to something else. Especially if they have existing in a home where the climate is not right for them to thrive. Either they're being verbally abused, physically abused, or sexually abused. And then sometimes you pass them and we just see them and just, those boys on the block again. But these boys on the block actually need a better outlet. They actually need people there. They need the resources to actually help get them out from being the boys on the block. Because when you really sit down and talk to them, they don't want to be the boys on the block,
Yeah.
But it comes to engineering again. It comes to thinking, well, that is the only way that I can survive. That's the only avenue that I have as a young man.
And then they will tell you, I'm a product of my environment.
But sometimes you really kind of blame them, because
Yes.
sometimes you say people need to just snap out of it, but sometimes, they just need to do better for themselves, or these men just need to do better. But how do you do better when you don't even know how to begin?
Indeed. And
Well-
you said something earlier about the vendors don't respect the children in terms of selling alcohol to them. So let's say in the past children growing up back in the days compared to now, you would maybe go to buy cigarettes for your grandfather or grandmother in the shop, or a shoot of alcohol, whatever they call it, Zaid, or whatever the name is. And in a little shortcut you pass into back to your home, you say, let me just taste that to see what granny really or daddy gets out of that. And that's where the whole thing starts.
Yes.
And then you start taking a little sip, then you might take a little more than a sip, and it just starts to be the pillar as to you leading down to the road of alcoholism. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, and the point about the alcohol consumption as a means of coping, I think, is a very significant issue for men.
And their health, especially.
And the health. I mean, I work in insurance, and if people did not know, insurance for men is more expensive than insurance for women. Because statistically speaking, it is said that men die faster than women. And it goes back to they not really taking care of themselves. And research has been done and has been arrived at that men drink more alcohol than women, they smoke more than women, they eat more greasy food than women. But I think it's because of the coping mechanism. I mean, we watch, well, some of us, we watch those love movies, and when women have a breakup, what they do is go at their home, they take a blanket, they get ice cream and chocolate, and they watch love movies.
Yes, yeah.
But when a man has a breakup, he goes to the bar, and the first thing he does is drink.
Yes.
And I mean, they do it initially as a coping mechanism because alcohol is nice, it makes you feel good. But the extended use of it is where the habit starts. So even after you recover, you have already been placed to be dependent on that. So you still consume it post recovering from the situation and stays with them for life. It's very hard to break. So the alcohol consumption, I think, is a very significant part, because I think alcohol is one of the biggest things we get addicted to quickly. And we have to find a way to show men that you don't need alcohol. You can find other ways of dealing with whatever you're dealing with. Maybe talking, maybe going and play sports, maybe taking a walk, maybe taking a drive. You have to find other ways of just resorting to alcohol. Alcohol, to me, is a quick fix, but it's a very dangerous fix.
And even too, as you said, alcohol, when I was a teenager, that was a very long time ago, you will not find many people smoking. You will not find many people smoking. Actually, if you even try to light up a cigarette, somebody watch your cut is like, what, you smoking? But no, smoking is more prevalent in our society. You see, and not just smoking, you see a lot of people who are chain smokers. And you see a lot of men who are chain smokers. And before you know it, they're hypertensive. And once you become hypertensive, you know, like you rightfully said, they think they're macho. So, hey, you know what? I don't need to really go to the doctor, even if, you know, I'll drink a little pop of water here and there, that sort of thing like that. And then you just find a steady decline in their health. Those of which who are diabetic, again, they still continue to drink the rum because they think, simply figure, just my little rum alone I drinking, but not realizing that at the end of the day, when you don't take care of yourself, you know, when it has been brought to that level, the next solution, the next step for it is death.
And you are so right. Mr. Haley, I didn't know I have to pay all that money for my health insurance, so we need to revisit that. But just to add to what you were saying as well, they tend to down spiral so much, and then when it becomes a problem, they look for help. Let's say they come to the healthcare facility, your blood pressure is sky high, your blood sugar is sky high. We try to manage them, we treat them, put them on medication. It helps them, but it alters some other part or some other aspect of their life. So let's say if men, you give that example of erectile dysfunction. So persons who are diabetic, especially men, you tend to fall in the erectile dysfunction category. So they will say, but doc, I'm not taking this medication because I cannot perform when the need is to perform. So you continue to do significant damage to your body because, okay, it's not allowing you to have an erection, yes, but also it's killing your kidneys, it's killing your liver. So we give you medication to help prevent you from down spiraling even more. But it's like, no, you're messing with my masculinity, I'm not in it.
Yeah, and that is the thing again too. Men simply figure that is the only thing that they have to give.
Yes, that's my contribution to society, and that's what I'm going with.
I think again is just again how men were engineered. A man can be very much of a nurturer. I look at you on Facebook all the time with your daughter. You know, a man is very much of a nurturer. It's not only the job of a woman. So if the situation comes, because some people being diabetic and hypertensive is genetic, right, doc?
Yes.
So if you're diabetic and hypertensive and you have to go on the medication, because you being able to perform, it's less important than you being able to live and being there for your family.
And when you're 6 foot under, who's worried about performing?
Who's worried about that?
There's no need for that.
There's no need for that. You know, if you're dead, you're dead. But it's again to how our men were wired.
Yeah.
I remember having a very interesting conversation with a group of male friends of mine. I said to them, men need to be rewired. Simply because the rewiring is not something to say, okay, like we want to take over and take advantage of men. No. You are here, you matter, you play an integral role in the functioning of society. You're allowed to be emotional. You're allowed to say, you know, when things bother you. You know, whatever profession that you decide to have, it's important. A friend of mine, when he went to grammar school back in the day, I remember that he wanted to do food and nutrition. That's what he wanted to do. His mother insisted he had to do sciences. Granted, he had the capacity. He's not a medical doctor, but he never really wanted to be a doctor.
Yes, that was it back then.
He never wanted to be a doctor. I reckon he's an excellent doctor now. That's his field. But he never wanted that. So it's just like we have to be set our boys. You must be a lawyer. You must be a doctor.
Indeed.
You must be an engineer.
I can relate. But I cannot discuss it on the radio.
Change your profession,
I mean, it's always good to be well decorated, but
Yes.
It's good to have something that is fundamental and integral already. But I understand that and I can relate, but
Yes.
I rather not say it on the radio.
You already have. But yes,
that definitely was how things were back then. I can agree to that. That you were given a career path most times by your parents, and that's the vision they had for you, and you had to go after it. But funny enough, when I look at society today, I find that has significantly changed, though.
Yes.
So, in my opinion, the whole issue with men is really us, our generation. I find that the school system right now is actually addressing that challenge from as low as grade 2. My daughter is in grade 2, and I saw her doing one of those lessons, I mean, with the homeschooling, so I had the privilege of actually seeing, and they were teaching her about her emotions and if she did something, how she would feel and what would trigger a response at the age of 7.
Yes.
Now, funny enough, that's considered as emotional intelligence, and
Yes.
I only learned about emotional intelligence in 2019.
Yeah, same here. On some girl on Instagram,
Yeah,
was advertising a course or something.
Yeah, some
Yes.
leadership course I did is where I actually found out that I had to sit down and ask myself, this happened, what did it do to me? Why did I react like that? I found out very late, but the school system right now is doing a fabulous job to introduce that concept from a very early age so that the issues that we're dealing with now, hopefully there will be better place to address them.
In the future.
Yes, I can see that definitely changing in the future. But for us, we're setting our ways. It's going to be a harder task for
It's
us.
going to be a little more difficult. So especially, again, to the young men in the community, like those who... There's this young boy who cuts my grass right now. He's not young anymore. He's 26. But he's been doing that since he was 14 years in my neighborhood because he always had that drive. You know, he came from an extended family and he figured he always wanted to make his own little money. So he got a little second-hand brush cutter, and you know, people in the neighborhood would not give anybody else his job just because they knew that was his. And he's 26, and he goes all over Dominica now. He's actually built himself. He's actually expanded. You know, so and that's what he does. He is a landscaper, and that is something that he wanted to do from the time that he was 14 years old. He will literally come and, you ready to cut the grass? He'll always be there. You ready to cut your grass? I mean, somebody else will look down and say about, oh, mister, he just cuts grass. But if he doesn't come, I'm in trouble. Because when the grass gets too high and you're passing to go to work and all these things stick up on your clothes and, you know, one to rat come and running that for you. You know, all these things happen. So we need to allow people to choose their own path.
Yes, definitely.
We need to allow men to choose their own path. Similarly, we always say we don't have many male nurses in Dominica.
No, we don't.
And nursing is a very lucrative field because it's always been said women are supposed to be nurses.
Because it looks good in appearance, that's all. But it's a very lucrative field, as you said.
Yes.
And it's maybe our mentality as well, because some of the men who maybe are here but they relocate to the United States, they go to do nursing assistants and they work in homes, they make their money, and no one knows their business. just basically like that. But if you're working in a small society or a small country, it's deemed that, oh man, my friend, men are supposed to be nurses. You're
Yes.
supposed to be a doctor.
Yes.
You can maybe be an orderly, but not a nurse.
For
You
some
understand?
reason, which is weird. Yeah, it's okay for them to be an orderly
But not in a sense.
or a medical doctor. There's a huge gap in between.
Yes.
But it's not okay for you to be a nurse. I remember in my time, my cousin's uncle, Dr. Gerald Nibbs, he was a nurse anesthesiologist.
Yes.
And that is the only person that I know up until one guy the other day I met, Fael, who's actually
Yes,
studying to become
yes.
a nurse.
Okay.
And they use the party could literally be his father, you know. So we don't find, there's so much of a gender stereotype. People speak about women and gender. There's so much of a gender stereotype for men. You know, if a man decides he wants to be a hairdresser, it's fine.
Yes.
It's perfectly fine. No man, okay, no, he's a barber. No. They simply, and they always criticize and say, okay, he must have feminine traits.
It
That's why
questions
he
your
wants to
sexuality.
be-
Yes.
Yes. And then a guy may say, well, you know what? Let me not do that because I think society is going to frown upon it. And he may just be very well the best hairdresser I've ever been to.
Imagine that.
Yes. But we're just going to take a short break, and believe it or not, we only have 6 more minutes to go.
You don't say.
I don't say. International Men's Day program, which is brought to you by the Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disabilities. So if you're just tuning in, we've been engaging Dr. Kevin Burnett, who is the National Coordinator for the COVID-19 Vaccination Unit, and Mr. Brenton Hillier, who is the Country Manager of Sagico,
Agency manager.
Agency Manager of Sagico, and as well as the Vice President of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce. And although our topic today has digressed because we wanted to touch on so many things, the topic of discussion today is actually better health for men and boys. And Dr. Bennett, can you encourage all men to get checked up regularly?
Yes, that is a good thing to say because One of the integral aspects of our primary healthcare services is accessibility to healthcare for every individual, especially men. So we encourage men to come to get checked. So primary healthcare works in the initiative of preventative measures. So we do screening measures to make sure that you don't develop a chronic condition. So we will do prostate checks to make sure that you don't develop prostate cancer, or we also do sugar checks to make sure that you don't develop diabetes, hypertensive checks, and so on and so forth, as well as different aspects of health. So we do dental care, right? A smile is a lasting impression. Once you see you smile, I know, okay, he has good teeth. I can talk to him, I can engage him.
Yes.
He doesn't have bad breath, more than likely. Right. So also medication and all the different stuff. So I would encourage all men and even young boys too as well to come get checked. We also do screening checks for vision.
Okay.
A lot of persons, after a while, their vision deteriorates and they don't know, they don't check into it until it's too late. Then when we have all these men that are partially blind, driving on the road, causing accidents for no reason at all when it could be prevented. So I would just encourage that, especially. We have 7 health districts, and each of the health districts, you either have a type 3 health center, which is equipped by a nurse and a doctor, and the type 1 health center, we do routine checks every day.
Okay. And we were talking about the insurance aspect of it, because, equally, at the end of the day, when it comes to your health, insurance is necessary and it is important.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but before I get to insurance, I want to really echo the sentiments that was just shared, because I think we as men take our health for granted. And especially the young men, we feel that we are supermen, that we don't have to slow down, and we keep going, and we don't take time out to see what's happening to our bodies. And you find that there are a lot of silent killers as it pertains to your health. So I can use myself as a perfect example. I'm 36 years old. I had not done a general checkup in maybe 3-4 years or so, because I felt like I'm fine, I feel fine, I'm walking around, I'm moving around, nothing is slowing me down. But then I've been always encouraged by my peers, go and get yourself checked. You need to get yourself checked. My other half also has been behind me, go and check yourself. And they say that about men. Men are very reluctant to go to a doctor. But I finally made this step. I went to the doctor. She sent me to do the full complete blood works. And when I went to her for the follow-up and I sat down with her and she showed me my cholesterol was high, and I was like, are you serious? So at first it was shocked, because I am 36 years of age. And for me to be 36 and hear that you have high cholesterol, and I mean, I'm not really big for that. I mean, I can lose weight, but I'm not big. But my cholesterol is high. And it made me realize that I had to change some things in my life. Now, I would say I caught it early, because what people don't understand is when you have high cholesterol, if it goes unchecked, it leads to a future heart attack. And I told the doctor, but I don't feel anything. I feel fine. How can my cholesterol be high? And she said, that's the thing about cholesterol. It starts blocking your arteries until it's too late, so you don't even know what's going on inside you. And I think men take that for granted. And funny enough, I went back to my work and I shared my story with my colleagues. And after sharing my story, another colleague of mine, a man, came forward and said, boy, my cholesterol was high too. So it's like, it's sort of taboo for men to go out there and get themselves checked and talk about it. But we need to start having those conversations. And I encourage another colleague of mine. I told him, you see what happened to me? I'm 36. Go and get yourself checked. So even if you're a young man, I think especially in this day and age with this stressful environment that we're in, COVID-19, you should aim to do at least an annual checkup. Because it's better you discover that something is wrong early so you can put measures in place to change it, rather than you finding out when it's too late and there isn't much that can be done to fix the situation. And you have to be willing to change too, because having a high cholesterol, I mean, right now I don't drink alcohol. I was forced to stop it. I have to eat more greens and beans, and it's a complete life change. But I am 36 years of age. I prefer make the changes now so that I can live for the foreseeable future, rather than sacrificing it and maybe passing away in a year, 2 years from a heart attack. So I want to really encourage the youth, listen to our doctor, get yourself checked at least every year.
And the good thing about it is, within the Caribbean, health centers, they're for free.
Yes. So that's the whole point of primary health care. It's accessible to everyone, no matter of your socio-economical background. You can access any health center. get checked at, well, if it's a type 3 health center, get checked at 24 hours around the clock. We have a resident nurse that is there and a resident doctor. So whatever issue you may have, you bring it to our attention and we address it for you. And it's free. So where else in the world can you access free healthcare like that? Before you go to an emergency room in the States, you make sure you pay your $1,000 or how you have your insurance on hand. Yeah, before you can get anything. The IV fluid that we give in Dominica, when you go to the casualty and you get it in your veins without a problem, a bag of that costs $800 in the States.
Wow.
Can you imagine that?
That's not a fun fact. $800.
$800 for one doctor to come and see you in your room or come and see you in the emergency room is $500 just to watch you, give you a diagnosis and turn their back.
Yeah, I've heard the stories. Even for the paracetamol you get, they charge you per tablet.
Yeah.
Okay, so men, get yourself checked out. You know, like you said, we have 7 health districts.
Yes.
You have on-call nurses, you have on-call doctors. When you mentioned earlier, you mentioned prostate checks for men. And we have quite a few. We have quite a few cases of prostate cancer.
Yes.
More often than we know.
Men tend to defer from having their prostate checks because everybody's thinking about a DRE, which is a digital rectal examination. No one wants a medical professional to do that invasive procedure on you. But as technology and medicine evolves, we now have what we call a prosthetic specific antigen. So it's a blood test that one can do to see the level at which the prostate antigen is, and if it's very high, then we can revert to doing the DRE and maybe a prosthetic ultrasound. But gold standard, the DRE, which is the rectal exam, is gold standard, which is the primary screening diagnosis or primary screening test that is used. But because of how invasive it may be and uncomfortable, we tend to lead towards the blood test because somebody can more be comfortable taking a blood test. But I must tell you, men are very, very shy of needles. So we have to outweigh the risks and the benefits on both and see what is much more possible and what is doable and what is, how would I say, acceptable for everybody else around the table. And as Mr. Hillier said about the cholesterol, so one may go about their daily life every day thinking, okay, I'm okay, I eat what I want, I'm okay. But it might have a scare at one time in the night that your pressure is very high. I'm like, where did I get this high pressure from? And the causative fact would be your cholesterol. So you're doing all these tests thinking, what is the problem? Not to know that it's the cholesterol and your lifestyle changes. And especially with COVID, I believe it also has to make you understand that, hey, this is the time now I can develop new skills. So you know that you're eating a lot of meat. Why not get a little twine or a fishing rod and go fishing? You can steam your fish instead. It's all the trans fats that you do with a lot of fried foods. So I believe COVID has also taught us a lesson as to diverse a bit. Get things in a different way. You do things all the time like this, chicken a lot. Let me go to fish now. I can actually go and catch my own fish, or only even my backyard gardening. Grow my own vegetables, my own ground provision. And also too, with the economical background what we have right now, that is maybe some person are laid off from work, you cannot buy the essential vitamins and minerals that you need to get in the pharmacy. So grow your own vitamin C stuff. You can grow your own citrus, your limes, your whatever the case may be. I mean, it might take a year, but at least you know you have an investment for tomorrow.
Definitely. And whilst we're on COVID-19, one of the things that the Bureau of Genetics is currently doing is a national vaccination drive, specifically targeting men.
Yes. So today is the 19th, right? International Men's Day. So we decided to have an island tour to promote vaccination as well as men's health. From the 24th to the 25th, we'll be going all over Dominica on these 3 days to administer vaccines. And it's not on the cards as yet, but I think we started it from tomorrow. So from tomorrow, we'll be at the Portsmouth Market, mainly the CUC Church at the Portsmouth Market, giving vaccines to men because we know this pandemic is dreadful. And all the tools that we need to try to break it down or to stop the trend is vaccinations. So we're trying to administer vaccines or make it accessible to everybody in the communities as well as Dominica as much as we can. And especially we're going to be targeting men. As we said, men tend to defer a lot from medical care. So that would be an avenue so that we can explore that for the men. And also on our island tour, we'll be going out in our branded buses, with our coolers, with our PA system. Encourage you, come have a glass of water, or we sit down and talk to you, take your blood pressure, and as well, the vaccines are there. If you want to get your first jab, you get your first jab, your second jab. You bring yourself, you bring your son, you bring your daughter. Be a man.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that, Dr. Bennett. And unfortunately, we have come to the close of our very interesting program. And let me just remind the public of some of the other things that Bureau of Gender Affairs is actually doing in light of International Men's Day. Honorable Dr. Addis King will be giving an address in her capacity as Minister of Youth. This is our panel discussion. And, the vaccination drive. There is going to be a men virtual awards. I wonder if you're getting one. Any of you getting one? Yes. And these are some of the and these are some of the things that the Bureau of Gender Affairs is actually doing, to highlight and celebrate our men. So thank you so much for being with us here this morning. We do appreciate your contributions. And, let me just encourage you to, do all that you can do for your fellow man.
Indeed.
If it's just somebody that you can see, that you can pull up, you can help. Because your contribution doesn't have to be any shape before monetary. A kind word, a listening ear. If somebody comes to you with a problem, a guy, hey, you can talk to me, and you keep it confidential.
It's okay to cry.
And it is most definitely okay to cry. So thank you for everyone who has tuned into Kyrie FM. I am your host, Aisha AC Challenger. Thank you for listening.
Men's world, but it wouldn't be nothing without a woman out there. Man thinks about a little bit of baby girls and a baby boys. Men make them